Today is Sunday, November 23rd, the 237th episode of Shea Station, and it is a very unexpected, melancholy, bittersweet one at that. Our first episode of the Offseason, another solo podcast. Brandon Nimmo, the longest tenured active Met, has been traded from the club to the Texas Rangers in a one-for-one swap for all-star second baseman Marcus Semien. There is a lot to digest in this move, a lot to go over, and it really is setting the tone for what is going to be a tumultuous, chaotic offseason of change for the 2026 New York Mets. I first want to start with some of the emotions and feelings of this move before we get to the stone cold hard facts and statistics and all that go into a decision being made like this one. I'm your host, Jack, aka Jolly Olive. Not joining me is Jerry Blevins, who's on his wonderful 10-year anniversary vacation with his lovely wife. So I hope that's going well. So it's a solo podcast. Might be a little bit rambly. This news hit me in a huge shock. I was with my family and my fiance, and then I felt bad because I was kind of trying to sneak check my phone while I'm supposed to be spending time with them. And, but it's big news, and you all know this, and I was able to squeak out a quick reaction, and now I'm filming this, so that's where things are at. So first and foremost, let's talk about the loss. Brandon Nimmo, no longer on the club, coming off a 25 home run, 3 WAR season, 760 OPS, but the numbers go beyond that as well. You're talking about a guy who spent 10 years in the blue and orange. He ranks in, Mets all-time position player statistics. He's number 8 all-time in Mets wins above replacement. He ranks highly on the hit leaderboard, total bases, all the things that you care about from a lifetime player. Brandon Nimmo's decently high up there alongside Pete Alonso. So this is a guy that's been a staple of this franchise for a decade at this point. And there have surely been ups and downs, highs and lows. The peak of this certainly, and the most important year when discussing the optics of Brandon Nimmo as a Met, is 2022. 2022 was the year that Nimmo finally seamlessly completed that transition to center field, put up a career best 5 WAR, 800 OPS. Things really clicked that year for him. Obviously, we all remember the home run robbery at Citi Field with DeGrom on the mound and Justin Turner at the plate as one of the more iconic moments of that season. And following that season is where Nimmo inked an 8-year free agent deal worth $162 million to remain with the club. That was the offseason where Diaz was hitting free agency, Jacob DeGrom was hitting free agency. The Mets had a lot of guys coming off the books after 101 wins, and Nimmo was one of the guys that was coming back. At the time, the Mets were paying a premium defender center fielder who could hit for power and get on base at an elite clip. And over the years, the optics of the player that Brandon Nimmo is have changed. Now, I don't think Brandon Nimmo is a bad player by any means, and I think most of you listening would absolutely agree with me. But I think it's also an abject truth that he's not the same player he was 3 years ago. And it's a combination of things. One, Nimmo has been trying to hit for more power, and the slug has been there in some cases and not in some cases. In 2024, his slugging clip was under 400, which is not great for a major league caliber, corner outfielder. Also, corner outfielder. Nimmo is no longer a center fielder. The defense graded out very poorly almost immediately after he signed that 8-year deal, and it's from a combination of things, most notably recurring injuries for Brandon Nimmo. He's had neck problems. He has plantar fasciitis that does not really gone away over the course of the past year and change. It's been a lingering issue, and I think the Mets front office was weighing that into consideration when looking at, the long-term specs of an 8-year deal with 5 years remaining on it at $20 million per. This past season, Brandon Nimmo was a good ball player. 3 WAR out of your left field spot is solid. You take that to the bank. He was playing, I think, decently up to his contract, though I think you could find better options for less on the market. The important thing to note, and the thing that really is the seed that was planted for this trade, is that in the postseason presser that David Stearns held, the one phrase or the one piece of terminology that he kept reiterating that he wanted this roster to improve in is run prevention. Run prevention, run prevention, run prevention. You obviously have Francisco Lindor up the middle, a premium elite class defender. Outside of that, the Mets had many holes in their defense. Pete Alonso grades out as one of the worst defensive first basemen in baseball. We all know about Juan Soto's defensive woes in right field. Third base was kind of a rotating door. When it was Vientos out there, it wasn't pretty. When it was Beatty, it was passable. But when you can only really point to Lindor at shortstop and Alvarez and Torrens behind the dish as defensive pluses, it's hard for a team that was so strapped for quality pitching to win on the margins and get that edge on the defensive side of the ball. So you knew change was coming if you were perceptive as a fan of something is going to get broken up here. I think a lot of fans probably first looked to Jeff McNeil, and I think that that's going to be a domino that falls. We'll talk about Marcus Semien and his role in the team going forward. But I always had just thought that while a Brandon Nimmo trade makes sense, it would be too difficult to pull off, mainly because Brandon Nimmo has a no trade clause in his contract. As much as I love some of the things that Billy Epler did, including that provision in Nimmo's contract made making this trade happen probably damn near impossible. Well, not impossible because it did happen. The crazy thing is that because this is out here now, Nimmo waived that no trade clause. And, this is a guy that was a lifelong Met. He said that when he first signed his extension in 2022, it feels good to put this jersey back on and know it's not coming off. Apparently, source from Michael Marino, MLB, take this with a grain of salt if you want to, but it was not an easy decision. The days leading up to this trade, Nimmo was mulling whether or not to waive the clause altogether. But this is a guy that's been here for a minute and very clearly liked to be in this uniform, but it's clear that the Mets are trying to shake things up in the clubhouse and shake things up defensively. So while they have two voids in their outfield now, in center field and left field, they can now fill those spots with, hopefully, quality offensive bats that can provide tremendous defensive upside, which is what David Surds did a ton in Milwaukee. And that's something that he still preaches upon being very important to him in terms of his roster construction. So that is the optics of this deal, what I think the Mets' motivations were behind this, because had Nimmo not regressed so badly defensively and had he not had these recurring health problems, bear in mind, Nimmo still played 150 plus games in each of the last 4 seasons, so it hasn't kept him off the field all that much. I think the Mets saw the warning signs on the horizon, and they're probably thinking maybe they can find a better option either internally or out there on the market and save some of the $20 million. And I think really a motivation for this trade was, those last 2 to 3 years of the deal where Nimmo's going to be 35, 36, 37, making $20 million a year and potentially hampering the payroll and also clogging up a pretty valuable spot on the diamond. For me, as a fan, going into the offseason, I thought, if we can get it done, heck yeah. I know it's a lot of fans probably aren't going to be on the same page and the emotions will be hurt, but I think this is a move that the Mets need to make to get better. I thought it would involve them probably eating more money. In the end, they didn't have to do that. And now that it's happened, I'm having one of those dumb sports moments where it was a thing that I was rooting for and wanting to kind of happen, even though I like Brandon Nimmo as a human being and a player. Now that it's real, I'm sad. I was sad in the car ride home. I'm watching all the videos of Nimmo's, past press conferences and him crying on the field after the 24 division series and all these things. And, baby Nimmo when he first got drafted. And, it's very rare that homegrown players stay in one uniform for their entire career. And Brandon Nimmo is going to be another case of that not happening for the New York Mets because he is going to be a Texas Ranger. And the feeling is definitely melancholy. I think that Brandon Nimmo definitely has good seasons left in the tank. I think the Texas Rangers got a good player in this deal. But I also think, speaking objectively, I think his best years are behind him. But that doesn't change the fact that it was pretty emotional. That's a guy I've been watching on my television for 10 years. He's been on the field most games that I've watched of Mets baseball for the past decade. And now that's not going to be the case anymore. Doesn't change his status in terms of lifelong Mets and, where he stands in franchise history. But now, you're probably not going to get a Nimmo number retirement or anything like that. And it's going to be weird seeing another near lifelong beloved Met wearing a Texas Rangers uniform because he'll be joining Jacob deGrom in that club as well. So out goes 5 years and $20.5 million per for Brandon Nimmo. In comes $26 million for the next 3 years, average annual value, for Marcus Semien. That's who the Mets got in return for this deal. Now, When I was dreaming on this trade in the early goings of the offseason, I think my mind and a lot of other people's minds might have gone to the Colorado Rockies, who are unafraid to spend money. They just don't always spend it wisely. That was Brandon Nimmo's childhood team. That seemed like a team he would waive a no-trade clause for. I don't know what the return would have been. I assumed it would have been prospects of some kind, or maybe one of those controllable bullpen arms that the Rockies have right now, like Seth Halverson or something like that. And that's not my own proposal. I feel like I heard that somewhere on maybe another podcast or just chatter in the John Boy office. But that was always like, I was like, if they don't want him, I don't think it's going to happen. And every year that goes by in this contract, it's going to get harder to trade Nimmo. Never did I think that we would get another major league position player in return. Not only that, an infielder, and not only that, a 2-time Gold Glover and 2-time Silver Slugger in Marcus Semien. So it's a huge shakeup for many reasons. Even before we get into Semien, the Mets have a ton of infielders on their 40-man roster. You know, beyond Lindor and the guys that are going to have spots carved out for them, there's Brett Beatty, who's going to get a long-term look at third base. There's Jeff McNeil, who still has another year of his contract on the books. Ronnie Mauricio might need some playing time. Where does Luis Angel Acuna end up now? Guys in the minor leagues that are looking for their shot as well. You know, Jet Williams is a top prospect at second base as well. That's going to get a deep look at spring training. So it's a shakeup in that regard because it clogs up the depth chart in the infield while severely draining the depth chart in the outfield because another major outfielder comes off the books for the New York Mets. In terms of the player you're getting, it's not going to be a huge offensive upgrade. Marcus Semien has not been the same offensive bat ever since that 2023 season where everyone on the Texas Rangers was banging the ball around. But just to say the words out loud because they're exciting, at age 32, in the second year of his Rangers deal, Semien played all 162 games. He led the American League with 7.7 wins above replacement, led the American League with 185 hits, 29 homers, 100 runs batted in, 72 walks to 110 strikeouts, an 826 OPS, a 276 batting average, and a third-place finish in MVP voting. That's the caliber of player Marcus Semien was 2 years ago, and next year it'll be 3 years ago. Last year, he was a below-league average bat, 97 OPS plus, 15 home runs. He missed substantial time really for the first time since 2017, which is a bit of a point of concern for me. You know, in 2024, 159 games, 23, 162, 22, 161, the year before that, 162. So it was basically full season or bust for Marcus Semien for every year of the 2020s leading up to last year, where he played 127 games. Still resulted in 534 plate appearances, which is a full season sample. Second base is not exactly a strong position in Major League Baseball right now. I think you can make somewhat a compelling argument that Semien could still grade out as like a top 10 second baseman in baseball. But the real reason why I think the Mets were perfectly fine with him as the return is that Semien's got a great glove up the middle, 92nd percentile and outs above average, a +7 value in terms of runs saved. And that is a much better value than what the Mets got out of second base last year from Jeff McNeil, who was more closer to league average in terms of his range. So if nothing else, if Semien does not hit, and I don't think he'll be hitting towards the top of this order, I think he'll be your 8 or 9 hitter and a veteran presence at that, he's going to give you a quality glove up the middle, and suddenly the Mets have a very dynamic, very talented second base shortstop combo. Two guys that have been around the block. You add a World Series champion to your clubhouse, a guy who is a lunch pail guy by all accounts, first one in, last one out. I've been in the Texas clubhouse before, so I have a little bit of wisdom here. Semien was one of the guys I talked to. I talked to Corey Seager as well, Josh Young. That clubhouse was very unlike many of the other Major League clubhouses I have been in. A very serious tenor in that clubhouse. The guys were still, kicking back, doing crosswords and stuff like that, but very, very businesslike. And Semien was very much, I think, in the hour that I spent there, viewed as sort of a de facto leader in that clubhouse, but still a very much personable guy. We exchanged a couple laughs. We shot something together. So I got to meet him, and I got a great impression of him, and I have to think that that's going to be a valuable clubhouse addition for the Mets, if nothing else. So his optics are going to be his contract, $26 million this year, $26 million next year, 2026 and 2027, and then $20 million at age 37 in 2028, which is, if things go really badly, we've seen Steve Cohen completely eat a contract of that value before if things are bad in that last year. But Semien's going to be your second baseman for the next 2 years on this club in this 1-for-1 swap. So one more note I want to add here from Ryan Garcia on Twitter. Just something to note. Had Semien played all of his games instead of at Citi Field instead of at Globe Life for the past 3 years, he would have had 18 additional home runs. Now, I'm not super familiar with his hitting profile. According to his spray chart from 2025, all of his power was to his pull side, not much opposite field going on there. 2024, pretty much a similar profile. And then his best season in 2023, he had 1 home run to right center field. So he's pull power, and that's how he's going to succeed. We'll see if that hitting profile can be more conducive to Citi Field and be something of a long-term solution there for the Mets. The Mets are also sending $5 million to the Texas Rangers to offset some of the financial value, because when you look at the lump sum, the Rangers take on $100 million and change, and the Mets take on closer to $70 million based on 26-26-20. So yeah, that is the trade. I mean, it is quite the shakeup. This has been a pretty thunderous start to the MLB offseason, and a start that's, like when you're in the early months of it, November is usually a very dull month, and we've had 2 huge trades, major leaguer for major leaguer. We had Taylor Ward and Grayson Rodriguez swapping places. Now we have Brandon Nimmo and Marcus Semien, which is on a much higher scale, in my opinion. But it was a shock, man. And I just think there's going to be more to come. I think this Mets team is going to look very, very different next year. What this move tells me is that I don't think Jeff McNeil is safe, and I think he's a much more easy piece to move than Brandon Nimmo ever was. I don't think Mark Vientos is safe. If David Stearns is going guns blazing into making this a more of a defensive stalwart team and hoping that his stars can hit like his stars did last year, I think any guy who had less than average defense is going to be not safe on this roster. That includes Ronnie Mauricio, if there's any value for him, but I think there's going to be a lot of parts in, parts out during this offseason. Maybe not so much in terms of free agent spending like we've seen in Mets offseasons of the past. I think it's going to be, they have quality, controllable position players, some on free agent contracts, some on team-controlled contracts, some pre-arbitration as well. Like, there's a lot they can do to shake up what this team looks like. And I think that this Mets team likes their farm system, and they want to start getting these guys shots. Like Carson Bench, I'm starting to pencil him in as like he's going to be your center fielder on opening day for the New York Mets. Jet Williams, I think they're going to find, like, if they don't like him at second base and they like him more at left field, there's his spot if they can't find a quality replacement for Brandon Nimmo. And I'm looking up and down the corner outfielders on Spot Track that are impending free agents this year. I'll read you some names if any of them stand out to you as something you like. But it's not. I mean, obviously you have Kyle Tucker and you have Cody Bellinger. I still am not fully convinced that the Mets are like guns blazing going to be involved in those things, because why would you trade a 5-year, $100 million commitment and then immediately add a new commitment to some other players that might have bad profiles that age long term? I just think that it's not something David Stearns likes to do, and it's not something he has a lot of experience doing. I think that also matters. Like, there's a growing narrative, and I think it's kind of warranted, that David Stearns is used to being a cost-efficient general manager, I'll say that, and he's not used to the big market. And I think there is a certain amount of skill to handling negotiations that are this big, and it is enlightening that David Stearns is trying now to shed all of the long-term commitments that he didn't sign on to, much in the way that, Craig Breslow traded Rafael Devers out of nowhere, because that was not a long-term commitment that he signed on to. It was the guy that came before him, Chaim Bloom. So I think that trying to get a clean slate with this payroll, I understand the motivation of it. It doesn't make the move any less shocking or, melancholy for a long-time Mets fan. But anyways, back to the options in the corner outfield, or center fielders, I guess, if you want to lump them in. I mean, Harrison Bader is a quality major leaguer that could play center field for you. when I look at the left fielders, it's Austin Hayes, who got declined his $10 million option, Conforto, who was a demotion, Jesse Winker, who couldn't play because of his back, Miguel Andujar, who had a crazy season, but who knows how replicable that is. Adolis Garcia got non-tendered. Mike Yastrzemski was quality for the Royals. We'll see if he's a fit. There's not a lot of sexy options. So I really do think you're going to see a young, homegrown 2026 Mets team. I'm that's the vibe I'm starting to get from this, and I'm just hoping that if that's their plan for the lineup and the defense, that they spend on pitching. Like if they decide that they're going to trade McNeil and they're going to trade Nimmo and they're going to trade Vientos and whoever else, and clear those spots for guys like Nick Morabito and Jet Williams and Carson Bench, who are at that AA, AAA fringe level that are ready for their shot, then just go spend all that freed up money on pitching. Go get me Ranger, go get me Fromber, go make a trade for somebody. I don't care what it is, but bring in 2 to 3 new pitchers that are going to give you 150 innings that you can count on, and let's start to compete again. I mean, that's not even getting to the bullpen, which they have to basically rebuild from the ground up. I'm hoping that some of the freed up money, in year 4 and year 5 of the Nimmo deal, that's $20 million that just came off the books. That's $20 million you can give Edwin Diaz now. Then you can kind of wipe your hands clean of, what would have been resting on your conscience of, we're paying Nimmo $20 million at age 37. Now we're also going to pay Diaz $20 million when he's 35. You don't have to worry about that now because the other $20 million is scrubbed off the books. And I just think this team really needs Edwin Diaz. But yeah, I really, as conflicting as it is in my brain, I don't have an issue with this. It hurts a little bit as a Mets fan, but I think that it's a good move for both sides. It's clear that the Rangers needed a little bit more thump in their lineup because the offense didn't come to play last year for them. Brandon Nimmo hit. It's not exactly easy to go find a 120 OPS plus bat. By the way, Brandon Nimmo has been above league average OPS every single year since 2017. He's only had 1 year in that window below 110, and that was 2024. This is a quality major league hitter. Last 3 years, 23 or more home runs. That's what they're getting. And I think that they're going to benefit a lot from it. It's just who plays center field for them now. Is it Wyatt Langford in center field? Because he was the left fielder. They got to figure that out. Maybe Wyatt goes to right field because Adolis Garcia got non-tendered. That feels like a super lateral move now as well for them. Adolis Garcia gets non-tendered, and then a day later, Brandon Nimmo is brought in. And for the Mets, they get exactly what they needed. They needed more run prevention. They didn't need they're going to need something in the offense to turn up, whether it's one of these young guys, but they didn't exactly benefit greatly from Nimmo's presence in the lineup because they had 3 amazing all-star caliber players in Soto, Lindor, and Alonso fully, carrying this offense. They needed pitching and they needed run prevention, and they got one of those things in this deal. So it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to digest. I wonder, the last thing that I'll say before I wrap up this kind of reactionary podcast is I wonder what it means for Pete Alonso. These guys, they didn't come up together, but as close to that as you can, because Nimmo debuted in 2016, but really became known as a longer-term piece on the team in those later 2010s years where Alonso came up in 2019 and won the Rookie of the Year and was announcing his claim as the fixture of the lineup to stay. And those guys kind of grew together. And I always view them very much as a duo of sorts, in the same way that I kind of view Lindor and Soto as a duo now. And I wonder, does this hurt Pete's potential return to New York? Does it influence it at all? Because I have to think that those guys were in conversation, and that's probably a shockwave to Pete Alonso. But the 2 things I took away from the postmortem of the 2025 Mets, a disastrous collapse, a collapse that absolutely warrants change in full regard for this entire roster, besides the guys that are getting paid $30 to $50 million, is that I think this organization wanted to shake up the clubhouse. Because say what you will about 2022, they won 101 games. Say what you will about 2024, made it to the NLCS. You can point to a lot of examples with this core failing in big moments. And I'm not saying that is because of Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo and guys that were in that group with them. I'm not saying that that's the full reason, but I don't think it's not a contributing factor. Like maybe the Mets are looking for more leadership. Marcus Semien, I think, gives you leadership. A guy that has done it all. He won a Gold Glove. He won a Silver Slugger, made a few All-Star teams, and won a World Series. Like, that's as close to doing it all as you can really get in this sport. Played for 10 years, all that. He's gotten non-tendered, he's gotten released, he's gotten traded, all of it. That is some wisdom that you can bring to the clubhouse. And I just wonder if the Mets are if they're gonna play a similar song and dance that they did with Pete last year, where they kind of were like, all right, go out and see what you can get, and he didn't really get the offers he thought he would, and he came back and they settled for this weird 1 year plus an option deal. And I just think there's more suitors out there now. Like, Red Sox are very interested. Like, the Rangers also might make a play for Pete. Like, they're in the market for a first baseman. It's putting a seed of doubt in his potential return for us, and I don't really know how to feel about it yet. I guess I'll have to confront those feelings when the time finally comes, because we haven't heard really anything about the Mets and Pete Alonso having any progression in talks. I don't know if it's positive or negative at this point, because the new Mets front office is so buttoned up that, like, you don't hear about anything they're doing until they do it, which is case in point, this trade right here. We had no inkling that Brandon Nimmo was being shopped heavily. There's been rumors in the past of Nimmo being shopped, and those got floated again this year, but like it's John Heyman, it's New York Post. I don't know how much I'm buying into it. And then bam, he's traded. So we're going to have to play the wait and see game, the waiting game. I mean, I don't think Alonso's going to sign before winter meetings, because Scott Boras is going to go put on a show like he always does. I'll be there as well. So if anything does happen, you guys will get live podcasts from me as well, live reactions and all that. But I think I've rambled enough on this. I think that's pretty much all I can give. It is a shock to the Mets core. The Mets are ushering in sort of a new era with this. Like, Juan Soto's in, Marcus Semien's in, Brandon Nimmo's out. Maybe Pete Alonso's out next. I don't know. I think things are changing. Maybe for the better. We'll have to wait and see. But it doesn't change the fact that I watched this guy play for 10 years. I think he's a quality major leaguer. I wouldn't have been upset if he retired as a Met. But I'm hoping that both sides of this trade can just come out a winner and be happy with what they got. And I think that that's entirely possible. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It was a long-term deal that the Mets were desperately trying to wriggle themselves out of, and they get better defense, and they lose a little bit of pop, and they lose a fan favorite, and it's very conflicting, as most major league trades are. Anyways, I hope you're having a wonderful baseball offseason, not thinking about the Mets too much, like I haven't been. I waited until something happened to do my first offseason pod, but it is good to be back on this channel. Make sure you guys leave a like on the video if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Leave a comment down below. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. I would love to hear if you completely disagree with me, because as I'm saying these things, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, when I'm looking at Brandon Nimmo's numbers, I'm like, did we fuck this up? Like, did we just trade a really good player? I want to hear what you have to say. If you're listening on a podcast app, please leave a rating or review. That kind of stuff really helps as well. I don't know when the next podcast will be. I want to get Jerry back in the fold and hear what he thinks about this as well. Might do another voicemail episode, so let me know if you liked our last one, and we'll do something like that again. We'll get your guys' thoughts on everything in the 2025-2026 offseason. That's all I got. I'll see you guys next time. Make sure you tune into Talking Baseball tomorrow. I'll be on that show, and then I'll also be on Baseball Today. And we'll probably be talking all about this trade, and I'll probably have new thoughts and new opinions with more information that comes out. Appreciate you all. That's all I got, though. I'll see you when I see you. LFGM.